Are you struggling with fear, depression, or anxiety? Are you in search of meaning and purpose? Would you like help navigating your current life circumstances? Tarot can help. Tarot is a powerful tool for healing, introspection, and spiritual awakening. The Esoteric Toolkit is a synthesis of ancient wisdom and modern science. It consists of tarot, numerology, astrology, and the Hermetic principles in conjunction with the modern science of consciousness. The revelation and application of this knowledge gives you the tools you need to help master your life, organize your mind, and overcome depression, fear, and anxiety. Learn to manifest your dreams and come into alignment with your highest self and the universe. Book your private one-on-one tarot reading today. Click the link in the description or go to www.theorderofchaosmagic.com. You can also find monthly tarot packages, a private Discord community featuring shadow work, and Mercury retrograde support groups, and much more by becoming a patron at patreon.com/theorderofchaos.
The following message is transmitted.
Welcome back to the Order of Chaos podcast. Today I have with me Carl Abrahamsson. Carl is a member of the Church of Satan, and today we're going to be talking about Satanism. And we're specifically going to be talking about the Church of Satan as founded by Anton Sanhre LaVey, not to be confused with some of the other satanic organizations that exist out there today. We're talking specifically about the Church of Satan. Carl, it is so good to have you on the show. I'm so excited for this episode in so many ways I can't even tell you. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
This book hit me so hard when I was a kid. I was 15 when I first got a copy of the Satanic Bible, and it spoke to me on such a deep and personal level. And it's been my introduction to occultism, which I then dedicated a large portion of my adult life to. And it is still very much my anchor in occultism. And I've gone off and studied many other forms of magic and esoteric philosophy and really dove into those as deeply as I can. And it's something I really love and enjoy doing, but I always come back to Satanism as my foundation. I just think it is a beautiful philosophy. And the reason I wanted to do this episode and the reason I reached out to the church, and thank you, I want to express a thank you to the Church of Satan for putting me in touch with you. The reason I reached out is that within the spiritual communities, there seems to be a second satanic panic happening in the world today, where the most popular conspiracy theory out there is that the world is run by an evil cabal of satanic pedophiles. And I'm so sick of hearing this. I can't even tell you. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the world isn't run by terrible people. But they aren't Satanists, and to conflate evil and Satanism or terrible behavior and Satanism is a huge mistake. And I want to introduce to my audience and to anyone out there who may be listening to Satanism the way that I know it, because it is a beautiful practice and it's helped me so much. It helped me so much as a kid. Shortly after my father passed away, I tried going to church and basically said, well, your dad thought all this was bullshit, so he went to hell. And honestly, I was 12 when my father passed away. I was 13 when I had that experience at church. And my first thought to myself was, well, if my dad went to hell, that's where I want to go too. And I walked right on out of there, and I went to the bookstore, and I picked up a copy of the Satanic Bible. And this was also in conjunction with me having a deep inner calling towards magic. I knew that it was real. I don't know how I knew. I just knew, and I wanted to learn more about it. And to this day, after having read hundreds an uncountable number of books on esoteric philosophy, I have not found a better description of magic than the one given in the Satanic Bible. It's my opinion that Anton LaVey was a master occultist. And not only was he a master occultist, but he cut through all the bullshit. I mean, he presents a system of magic that is so succinct and easy to understand that it can bridge the gap even for the staunchest of atheists to understand that magic is real. So again, I just have tremendous reverence and gratitude towards the Church of Satan and towards Anton LaVey and towards you for being here to talk about it with me today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Swedish. I live in Sweden, and I work mainly with writing. And I also have a little publishing company. So I'm sort of obsessed by bookmaking, writing books, and also publishing them. And that's always been the case. And I dabble a little bit in music, and I also make films. Just I don't know, I can't help it but try different things. But I always seem to have a core of writing. So that's the very short story. But I am also very, very interested in magic on a personal level, but also on the level of what is it in the greater scale when you look at human culture, human history on a pretty global scale. So I always had this interest which is part anthropology and part magic in a way, spirituality, philosophy, all of these things. And I sort of came up with this term that I call magical anthropology, which is, the study of how humans relate to magic. And so that's also something that I work with a lot. I have this sort of annual journal called the Fenris Wolf, which is basically kind of a magical anthropological journal where I use historical texts and also contemporary texts and create a little archive of thoughts and research about specifically these things, which also includes contemporary Satanism. There's been a lot of LaVey in there a long, long time ago, way back when. Also translated the Satanic Bible into Swedish. So it's always been there in my life, so to speak, since my teens. Like yourself, his book affected me a lot. I've always felt a resonance with it, and later on with him, and later on with the Church of Satan. In that sense, there is something there that is, for me, pretty undefinable. It's just a resonance, and of course we don't have to explain why or try to figure out in detail like some kind of scientific dissection. It's just there, and it feels like something very, very valuable to me. So basically I'm an author, and I write about and study these very, very interesting things. And let's call it the Satanic Haven has always been a good home for me. I felt I belonged there.
Yeah, that feeling of belonging is something that I felt immediately. I mean, I hadn't even finished the book yet. I was 2 chapters into the Satanic Bible, and I had already latched onto it in a way that was. It's like meeting the love of your life, and I'm not trying to romanticize this so much. It's just this is just how I feel. The book got me through so many hard times and spoke to me on such a personal level, and I think that was. Of all the gifts that Anton LaVey had, one of the most prevalent was his ability to touch you emotionally through his words, and he understood. I've personally never gotten the chance to hear much of the music he created, except in watching your film Into the Devil's Den, which was fantastic. I loved it.
Thank you.
Hearing Anton play the keyboards was really cool in the brief moments when he was being musical. But he did talk about how music can touch your soul, and as a musician myself, I absolutely music has an effect on you, and I can only compare the words in the Satanic Bible to music in the way that they touched me. Yeah, it's it's a very powerful book, and to anyone out there who hasn't read it, I highly recommend you do. It's nothing to be afraid of. It's so empowering and so intensely individualistic, and that's what I love about about LaVey's philosophy. It was intensely individualistic. And
Absolutely, and also it came at a time when things were quite very dualistic. There was this division between the straights, the conservatives, and sort of white middle class America, and then you had the hippies and everything sort of political going on, and also that reflected in the religious spectrum also, with kind of conservative Christianity on one hand, and then you had the very, very free and very, very liberal hippies and sort of the sexual revolution, and of course the psychedelic revolution. And LaVey was sort of very well centered in the middle of this, and could see that, well, I agree with some things here, maybe some things there, but I have my own thing, and it's neither nor or either or. It's just my own thing, and I think that the reason why the book it packed such a powerful punch was the timing. And many people in my film, I asked them, would it have been different if he hadn't used the S word, if he hadn't used Satan as an anchor or as a symbol? And the answer is, of course, no. The philosophy would have been as empowering, but he needed that attention. And for him, it was a real thing, in the sense it was a real symbol, a symbol on which he could hang an entire philosophical system. So I think the timing was one thing. And then also, I think it leaked through his own passion, his own thinking, his own obsessions in the best possible way, his own crystallizations, interests, passions. All these things reflect very well through his writing. He was a good writer. And I think people get affected by that. Then you have this thing where some people are, as you mentioned, perhaps afraid, to go closer to something that has that, pentagram and has the Satan word, and that's fair and fine. LaVey used that as what he called like a bullshit detector. If you can't get through that first hurdle, in a way, which is essentially symbolic, then there's no point in even talking to you. For those who could go through, pass through that, and then see what's actually inside the book in terms of actual thoughts and philosophy and also magic, then that then becomes a different ballgame. Then you can share a resonance, which is, of course, based on the fact that it's, as you said, a highly individualistic philosophy and religion and thought system. So make no mistake, it's really about what you feel and what you want to do. And that's also, the way I like to look at how the Church of Satan works is like, it's a bit of an oasis. You have this desert of mediocrity and stupid people and, just mindlessly stupid things going on. And yet you don't want to join some group, some collective to, possibly fight this or whatever. You want to stick to yourself and retain your own energy for your own creative, processes and enjoy life, basically. Yet, at the same time, it can be good to sometimes seek a little waterhole where you find like-minded people. And it doesn't need to be in the same physical space. It could just be in a kind of a mental space, or take part of someone else's culture, creations, and seek a forum. And in that sense, that for me is what the Church of Satan is. It's like an oasis where more or less like-minded people can, if not get together, at least know how you get together should you want to, and also know that there are others out there. And that can be quite a comforting idea, regardless if you want to be completely on your own, which I do think that most people want to, at least the LaVeyan Satanists. They're pretty fine on their own. However, I've met a lot of really nice, intelligent people under that umbrella. So for me, it's worked on a social level also, I have to say.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that, I mean, I have been a member of witchcraft circles for many, many years, and I almost never meet Satanists. I have a close group of friends who all identify as Luciferian and are very similar philosophically and magically,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't meet many Satanists. And I think that part of the reason for that is as you were talking about the bullshit detector factor, that it takes a lot of bravery to say, I am a Satanist. To use that word, people are afraid of it on a subconscious level that they don't fully understand. And I think that is really interesting to me, and something that I notice within the spiritual communities, especially in the love and light, white magic nonsense communities that exist, is that they want to associate themselves with good. They want to wear that good guy badge. And
Yeah.
it is so intensely narcissistic, and they don't realize it. And it's hilarious to me. And so I'm always, I've been looking for other Satanists, and I don't find them. And I think that it is a philosophy that takes an amount of bravery and an amount of humor and intelligence that is receding from the world today.
Yeah.
People are falling into groupthink and victimhood at an unprecedented level.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's sad that Anton has passed away, because the world needs him. I mean, at least we have his writing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's a pretty constant thing. We're alive now, and he was alive then, and there was a bit of overlap for me. I'm happy to say, but there's been this constant present all through human culture, not only of the satanic principle. There's always been some kind of satanic figure in each little culture, in each belief system, in each religion. If not, as simple as within the monotheistic cultures, and at least some, trickster figure in the polytheistic environments, or it's just always been there. Someone who pokes a little fun, who pokes where it hurts, who makes people aware of hypocrisy, and all these things. And it's usually a very popular figure, meaning it's popular, really popular among the populace. People really like him. But the more you put the lid on opportunity to voice what you really feel, for instance, again within the monotheistic religions and societies, then actually the more powerful that force becomes. Because if everything is allowed and out in the open, etc., then you can have a good ground to talk to people about, nuances within that culture, and say that, well, I think, these people over here, they're pretty hypocritical, and we should do something about it. And that can be, handled in many ways. But if you have a very repressive culture, then the force, almost like a secret force or a little cabal of, could be only one person, who goes against the grain and carries that Luciferian or satanic principle, can be very, very powerful. Because one thing I come across often is that some people want to, for instance, provoke me or provoke others by saying, you can only be a Satanist if you believe in Christianity or whatever, trying to prove that there's some kind of dichotomy or some kind of dualism that's always at play. But it's not really that easy, because if you look at each culture, each human culture, there's always some principle that is satanic, and the reason why I use the word is, again, because I feel at home within this specific environment that LaVey created, and he felt it correct to use that term at that point in history, and I think that's still valid. And we can talk about contemporary United States and all the weird conspiracies that are going on there, and it's kind of depressing and laughable, and kind of troublesome potentially. But the thing is that they those people who swallow these things without chewing, meaning, there are Satanists doing this or that and the most preposterous things, they are the ones fueling the
Yes.
Satanic principle. And they don't
Absolutely.
have a clue because they're simply so afraid to look at themselves, basically, and therefore they regurgitate something that some money-making racketeers are presenting to them in a very palatable format. Anyway, the principle is always there in each community. It could be like two people. There will always be someone who carries some kind of principle of going against the grain. And of course, that's reflected very much in culture and in myth. Like, for instance, it's a basic example, but when you look at when you watch the Star Wars movies, I mean, who's the leader? That's not everybody looks at it that way, because most people will go, hey, Luke Skywalker, or any of those sort of normcore heroes.
Mm-hmm.
But for some people, I think you and I are those people. We sort of root for the more special people who are cooler and who carry that principle of not necessarily like evil in that Star Wars sense, but who carry something that has so much integrity that the normcore stability or the status quo gets threatened by it. Yet at the same time, you could also look at the Satanic principle as a kind of immune system. If you look at a society, for instance, or a culture as an organism, for the overall health, there needs to be some agent that pinpoints this is where the organism is weak. This is where the organism is sick. The organism, or some parts of the organism, may not want to hear that because it disturbs their status quo within the organism. But at the same time, if you don't do anything about that specific thing, then the organism as such will suffer. Mm-hmm. So I think that is a little bit what's going on in the US. There's no longer like or if there ever was, it's like there's no whole organism. It's just rampant body parts out on their own, literally on a limb, and there's no communication in between the limbs. And I think that they're pinpointing, Satan, Satanism, Satanists, without even knowing what they're talking about, is an example of that, where you use these catchphrases or simple, memeable concepts adapted for their mindless communication, I guess.
I agree, and it is mindless, truly mindless, because I have not read the New Testament in its entirety, but I have read the Old Testament, and I don't know how anybody could read the Old Testament and come to the conclusion that the Abrahamic God was the good guy in that story. I don't get it. And everyone associates God with good. And I think these people must maybe they're unaware of Christian lore or Abrahamic lore, because the Abrahamic God is guilty of everything they accuse these Satanists of. I mean, he commanded Abraham to kill his firstborn son, killed all the firstborn in Egypt. I mean, wanted to wipe humanity out with the plague. And not only that, but if you look at the church as an organization, let's say specifically the Catholic Church, who is responsible for the genocide of many indigenous cultures, and also for the molestation of countless young boys. I mean, you're talking about satanic pedophile people running the world. Well, look at the church.
Yeah, exactly.
Look and the influence that the church has historically had over governments of the world. I mean, there's your evil right there.
Exactly. And that's exactly it. And that's why it's so easy to see exactly that, because it's, psychotic people, they have projections. They project outwards in order to shine the light away from themselves. Yeah. And that's exactly what that specific thing is about. It's the weird, disturbed, disgusting people and structures doing really bad things, anti-human things, inhumane things, and then, in order to get away with it, either corrupt other kinds of structures through their influence, or just project on some, poor little group, whether it's women or witches or Jews or whatever. Throughout history, they really sampled everything, and it's just sad that people aren't questioning these structures anymore, and also questioning the myths, questioning the fairy tales, because for me, specifically the monotheistic ones, they feel a little bit redundant. They don't feel really up to par in regard to where we're at today. There are other issues much more pressing than seeking absolution from some stranger in a cubicle. And when I say that, I thought at the same time, it's like some kind of glory hole in a gay club context. You go into this dark cubicle, and on the other side of the wall is a complete stranger to which you give yourself, in a way, in the hope that you will feel better. But that doesn't really mean that it's it's a good thing. No moralism implied here. But it's just, why should some random person dressed in a weird robe be able to give you absolution for your sins so that you can keep sinning? That's the hypocrisy for you right there. So instead of dealing with your own problems and dealing with, if you want to, the world's problems, you're entangled in a power dynamic that keeps you static, that will never set you free, that will never make you a valuable member to the community or the world. You'll just be a little ant with a bad conscience, because someone has imposed moral and moralistic structures upon you, and you will never get rid of them.
And it was amoral people doing it. Amoral people imposing these structures on you, telling you to obey.
Exactly.
And
yep.
I have been a contrarian my whole life. If you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to do it twice, and I'm going to take pictures.
Yeah.
That's just that is who I am at my core. And it's one of the reasons, I'm sure, why the Satanic Bible spoke to me so much, is that I have always gone against the grain, and I always will. As Aleister Crowley put it, the key to joy is disobedience.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because obedience, and especially obedience to a tyrannical, patriarchal, authoritarian figure like the Abrahamic God, it's crazy to me, because it's such an anti-human philosophy. And I think this is what LaVey was really trying to get at, was that he wanted to create a philosophy that was pro-human and not anti-human.
Yeah. He says in an interview somewhere that he's not specifically he's not as much anti-Christian as he is unchristian, in the sense that I don't think he felt the need to keep banging his head against that concrete wall of massive Christian stupidity. I think that he felt that this is not for me. If they want to do that, that's fine, to each his own, because he already knew, even before the Church of Satan, because he had this thing called the Magic Circle in his black house, and he was interested all along, since his teenage years. So he had been in touch with a lot of really magical people before that, and I think that showed him that there will always be these odd people, these people who are outsiders. Society looks at them as freaks in some way, but there will always be a kind of a community, because you can talk to each other about this and that. It's very usually these people are very open-minded, because other people are intolerant towards them. So when they meet a fellow victim, in a way, of some kind of intolerance, there's no need to explain who you are. You can sort of feel that. And in that sense, a Christian who goes to church on Sunday, at least you know where they are. it's like daycare, kindergarten, so I think that's what he was after. Then of course if someone gets like aggressively vocal or aggressively antithetical, then you have to deal with it in some way. But I think for him, he was very much a Nietzschean. He looked at these people as sheep, basically, and as long as they're in their flock, it's maybe better to be unchristian than specifically anti-Christian. Then if they say that he's an anti-Christian, what can you do? People will say a lot of things, and maybe essentially it doesn't mean anything. I think you're very right in saying that he was pro-human in the sense there's a movement, what's it called? I'll come to think of it soon. Anyway, it's not necessarily a humanistic attitude, but it's, I know, human potential it's called. He was very much of a human potential guy, meaning that under the right circumstances, the human individual can, bloom and make the most of what he or she has from genetics, from childhood, from growing up, and of course, how he or she uses their own abilities. So that should be encouraged. That should be taken care of, lauded, pepped, all these things by, of course, parents and other kinds of people in their surroundings. So he saw that, and I think really wanted to cheer that on. That's not saying that he would love all of them or what they were doing, but that's not the point. He was kind of self-contained and happy with just being in his own sphere. But if you want to take his philosophy one step further and sort of extend it beyond the Church of Satan, for instance, or even beyond the philosophy, I think he liked people who the people that go against the grain and people who develop what they have. And especially, I think, develop what they have in hardship. People who transcend, people who overcome. And there again, you have the Nietzschean connection. The joy of life comes from overcoming. You mentioned the Crowley quote there, the key to joy is disobedience. But I would say that I agree with that. But I think also if you're not someone who goes, what do you call it, confrontational, then the joy in those people's lives will be overcoming their own personal hurdles, their own personal problems. And again, that can be a threatening thing to do and to be, because society in general, or our culture anyway, like for people to be diverted, to be fragmented, to be preoccupied with completely meaningless things, like consuming things they don't need, etc., and taking part of a culture that gives nothing back. They steal time, they steal energy. So
and
I think
again, the psychic vampires wearing a good guy badge. I mean, that is a description of society today.
Yeah, absolutely, on a very large scale, which is sad. But so people who really work with themselves, for themselves, whether it's under privileged circumstances or hardship circumstances, that doesn't matter. The main thing is that you do it. But I think LaVey, coming from circus and the sideshow background, and seeing, for instance, how the sideshow freaks were treated among the general populace, and at the sideshow they were like royalty in a way. I think he appreciated people who go through hardship and yet overcome and become whatever they want to and can become based on their abilities and potential. So there's a lot of I think satanic gold dust in those stories, people who oppose hindrances, whether they be societal or personal, and just come out on the other side as a more refined and certainly happier human being.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a Satanist is a person who would absolutely answer the call to adventure that most people deny. And as a huge fan of Carl Jung and of the concept of shadow work, I have always I've always seen the two as being so similar
Yeah.
that to be a Satanist is to answer the call to adventure and to explore yourself and even the darkest parts of yourself, explore them fully, to integrate them, to make friends with your demons, and to come out the other side better, stronger, happier, and to know yourself on a level that you never did before. And that is the essence of shadow work, and it is something that's built right into Satanism. And I love that so much.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that kind of psychological cluster is very present, and it's very strict. You know, you have the S word as a strong, powerful symbol that you can use for, you know, shock effect or no effect. It's all up to you, and you can use it as a magical principle, but you can also not do it. But what I mean by strict and the psychological context is that there were, of course, other things going on at the time also, meaning in the middle of the 20th century, and that's sort of not the emergence, but the actual establishment of psychology via Freud and Jung. And Jung was more of a pop psychologist, and that's not decimating his essence, but he was more readily available in pop culture, came up with all these great terms and stuff like that. And what you said too, you know, you have to sort of meet your demons. That's a good thing. It's like very common to say that in different contexts, but it's also kind of tainted by a Christian culture or a monotheistic culture, saying that you know, it's specifically what they don't want to happen, meaning they don't want people to look inside. So of course they will call it meet your demon. But, you know, as we all know, if you look to the original meaning or the etymology of the word, it comes from the Greek daimon. It means like more like a guardian angel. It's nothing, you know, inherently demonic or bad or negative about that. It's some higher force that can guide you on your own individual path. So there's always that kind of corruption of good things that came back with a vengeance in a way in this psychological onslaught in the 20th century. And I would say specifically via Jung. So I'm also a big fan of Jung's, and LaVey, of course, was very much into psychology, and you can feel that in his books also. You know, he was a Freudian. He also promoted very much theories of Wilhelm Reich and many others that were groundbreaking still at that time, mid 20th century, but today have even more presence, and their ideas are more, you know, validated, integrated, etc., etc. So that's also an interesting thing about LaVey and his philosophy, is that he introduced not only specifically, you know, occult ideas or even magical ideas. He brought along a lot of other stuff too, with culture, with psychology, music, and also integrating these things as real fodder in your own magical universe.
Yes.
Not just, you know, dressing up according to some, you know, grimoire from whenever, or some, you know, hocus pocus group from the 19th century, or, you know, invoking this or invoking that only as some kind of, you know, flat two-dimensional psychodrama. He wanted people to integrate things that had real magical relevance to them. And if you have a group, you work in a group, then you have to make sure that that sort of resonance is there also. And if you work on your own, it's even simpler. Then you just look at, you know, what kind of things do I want in this, you know, cherished special place in which I do these, you know, rituals, whether they are already existing or whether you ad lib on an intuitive level. But you need to charge time. You need to charge the space with things that mean something for you. Yes. And he brought that into, I will say, magical consciousness of the time, and it's still resounding now, in the sense that he brought in his musical abilities, songs that he had loved for a long time, new songs that he found that were old, movies, quotes from movies, old forgotten writers and books. And these became magical building blocks. And that was very, very radical. And I would argue that it's still radical, because when you talk about these things with, academics or people in other, orientations or magical groups or societies, it seems that they simply cannot understand what you're talking about or what he was talking about, because they follow a regimen that has been created by someone else. It's more like a guru thing, or a group guru, a collective, an authority, that if you play by these rules and do that, you will get results. But I doubt that they get results, because there's nothing there that is inherently
personal.
them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, I quoted Aleister Crowley, and I do talk about Crowley a bit every once in a while on this podcast, but I want to make it clear that I do not practice ceremonial magic as presented by Aleister Crowley. I'm a fan of some of his philosophy, some of his writings, some of his ideas, but specifically, you own this copy of the Goetia. There is one line in this book that is so in line with Satanism that to me, they just go right together. And it's when he explains in the introduction to this book, which is titled The Initiated Interpretation of Ceremonial Magic, and he states that the demons of the Goetia are portions of the human brain. That, to me, just right there, right with satanic magic, and right along with, I'm also a Hermeticist and a follower of the Kabbalion, and one of the Hermetic principles being the principle of mentalism. These three things, when they combine, to me, create this perfect triangle of what magic truly is. And it's within you, and it's personal to you, and you do not need to follow anyone else's rules. Magic comes from developing a well of emotion within you and letting it burst out into the world. And LaVey understood that and explained it so well. Like I said, I've got this bookshelf back here, and I've got hundreds of grimoires, I've got hundreds of books on magic, and not one puts it as clearly as LaVey did.
I agree.
Having practiced so many different types of magic, I still, the most emotion I can well up in myself often is reading the incantations that LaVey wrote. They just do it. It's like a song that just makes you have to dance, It works, and it's powerful and fantastic. And so, having studied all these different magical practices, I keep coming to the conclusion that LaVey must have studied even harder and more than I do, and just saw through all of it, which is an incredible talent, because I get lost in it occasionally. I'll get deep into the runes, or I'll get deep into Egyptian lore, and just like my head will be stuck there for so long, and I'll have to pull myself out of it. I feel like he probably never had that problem. He just saw right through what was bullshit and what was valuable magical information.
No, I hear you, and I agree. I think it's one allegorical way of looking at it could be that when you check different things out with a passion and a hunger, I think you do that because you're learning. I don't know, not necessarily a profession being a magician, but maybe it's like a vocation and you want to learn more. And the allegory I was thinking about is like, it's cooking. Some people like particular cuisine, but that usually means also that you're interested in other cuisines to see what they're doing and if they can blend somehow. Some people are gourmets and some people are gourmands. Some people are, like carbs, and some people don't. But it's all food. It's all supposed to be nourishment, and the most important thing, it's supposed to be well tasting. And if people keep chewing on something that's doesn't give them anything in nutrition or taste, then what's the point? Then they're just like little masochists play acting. So I think, like I said, I've been very interested in all the aspects, and not all these magical things give me fuel for my engine, but it's still very, very interesting to see why these people over here do things like this, or this culture did this. And, it's endlessly fascinating, because you can say that if there's one like cornerstone, something, or a building foundational brick, whatever you want to call it, is that magic always exists. And I don't mean that necessarily like a cosmic statement, but it's just it exists in the human mind. The need for magic, magical thinking, magical acting, doing ritual. It's a very, ingrained behavior that I claim is part of our survival strategies. We've always used magic, the dawn of time, so-called, in warding off evil spirits or threatening tribes or getting good, success in the hunting. There's always been that kind of proto-religious approach to dealing with life in order to stay alive. And I think what we're seeing today with this re-emergence of a lot of magic in popular culture and even in academia, and of course with practitioners from all kinds of directions. I think it's because humanity is fucking up its own existence in a way. The planet, I think, eventually will be fine. There'll be some hiccups, but we don't know what's going to happen with us, with the human race. And I think that's the reason why there's such an onslaught of door opening going on. Where people are looking instinctively, I would say, rather than intuitively. It's a difference there. People are instinctively looking for magical ways of dealing with things, and it's a sign of health. Because yes. the empirical, the rational, it only goes so far. It's good for organizing and structuring, but it really gives no insight into sort of like the real mysteries of just staying alive, because, let's not get too dystopic or depressed, but I think that you can never escape magic. No one can. You can say that, oh, well, I'm a Catholic, or I'm this or that, but it's all magic.
It's all magic. Yeah.
Unfortunately for them, they have this thick, suffocating layer of moralism on top, simply so that they can make money out of all their sheep. But it's still magical thinking. It's still magical.
The difference between prayer and magic is that magic is prayer, with emphasis, with chutzpah, with intent and passion behind it, instead of just begging God to do something for you.
Yeah.
They're really it's the same core principle. It's putting, well, maybe not, because one is really asking and one is more commanding. And that's how I view it, at least. I know that I'm not going to say what magic is for everybody. That's how I view it. When I perform a ritual, I am not begging. I am certainly not begging. I am exerting my psychic force onto the world. And as you were saying about evolution, and I think personally, this is just my personal opinion, that evolution gave us these incredible brains not to scroll through TikTok for 20 hours a day and create cell phones, but it was to exert psychic force onto the world. That's why we're so smart. And people are figuring that out again at this present moment in history. People are realizing we can use these incredible brains we have to exert psychic force and to create our own reality. And that phrase right there just leads me to another interesting thing that I'm seeing in the world of occultism, again, with all these love and light, white witch people out there wearing the good guy badge, all talking about creating your own reality. Well, that's a concept that Anton LaVey was passionate about in what he called it total environments. But it is the idea that you can create the world you want to live in, that you can create your own personal environment to be exactly what you want it to be, but you have to be brave to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a multi-layered concept, because you can look at it that, of course, you want, for instance, your home to reflect who you are. That could be part of a social game or a social interaction. And that's, I guess, what most people do. The problem is that they don't really reflect anything but the big chains from which they buy their furniture. It's like most homes here are like IKEA homes, and it's kind of bland. But if you go deeper and say that, whoa, this person has something very unique here. It could be an heirloom, or it could be something bought in an antique shop, whatever, because there's a preference. That kind of discerning, stratifying preference, that's a very magical thing. And then, of course, if you create an entire room, if you can't do your entire living space, but just a little section of a room or a full room with things that are magical in that sense, is that they have this massive resonance, then interesting things will happen in that room, and you can ascribe it to magic or psychology or whatever, but you will feel it when you're in that room. And of course, you can be in that room to feel continually invigorated. You can do ritual there. You can just hang out there and feel completely refreshed. Whereas if you were in another room, a normal room with sort of normal people and normal furniture, you would only feel maybe drained or just neutral. So there's an interesting thing there in which, of course, objects can be very alive too in this sort of talismanic sense. And if you go for that rather than the IKEA, then interesting things will happen. That's just the way it is. And he, of course, really kept on churning with the concept. And I mean, for instance, the Black House, and it was really a total environment based completely on his preferences, completely on his taste. So no wonder it not only reflected him, but it was like he reflected back to the environment. It was really like an incredibly synergetic and powerful environment. And I've come across that in other places too, even with people who are not specifically, magical or interested in that. It's just that they have taste and passion, and they go for getting things exactly the way they want to have it.
And those tend to be very successful people.
Yeah, or not, I would say. I mean, they usually, if you say that people need a lot of money, for instance, to get these things, but it could equally well be stuff that they have inherited or things from a thrift store, just something peculiar about that little thing or that bookshelf or whatever. And then you put it together like a three-dimensional puzzle in your own home, and just makes people happy. To be
that's what I should have said rather than successful. What I really meant was these people are happy.
Yes.
And that's what success really is. It's achieving.
Yes,
it's not
course.
Financial. It's achieving happiness. It's the ability to wake up every day and smile.
Yeah.
And my ability to wake up every day and smile has everything to do with the way that I construct my home and my environment, because it's got to be personal to me. And I feel like the obsession with Instagram and TikTok and social media and all this stuff has everyone trying to copy each other, and that's going to drain everyone of their essence.
Yeah.
And it's going to get this homogenized bullshit of everyone trying to be just like everyone else. But I remember, I'm 38, and I was born in 1983. And I remember the early 90s and the late 80s and kind of everything leading up to the new millennium. It was all about being you. It was being like what makes you special. And now it's like people are afraid to be special in any way. They just want to be just like everyone else and want to wear the right shoes and, do their hair the right way and this and that and just bleh. And it's awful. It's just awful. And I hate it. And I want to see people who are, again, I want to meet people who are intensely individualistic and have something special and know that they're special, because we all are. I like to believe that everybody has it within them to be that radical, awesome version of themselves. We're afraid for some reason.
Yeah, it's just like this numbing peer pressure and societal pressure, and just holding people back. That said, I my take on it is that I'm not sure that absolutely everybody has it. Some people you just have to really break open to look inside. Is there someone in here? Because they're so void and vacant in a way that maybe they are just if not happy consumers, then maybe they're just consumers, and thereby they fulfill some kind of function. But I find it sad when people, I can immediately sense that, these people would be happier if they stuck to their own vision or stuck to what they want to do, because you could see that they have this sort of faint glow around them that should be a bright spark or even a fire. And the people who are that you meet that are really interesting in life are those fire people, people who've ignited themselves in a way and worked with themselves and just discovered what they want to do with the rest of their life. And that's the thing, then they also do it, because most neurotics are just people who know what they want to do, but they don't do it. So there are two things. There's one is coming to that insight and realization and formulation of yourself, and then the second might be harder. That's to actually implement it and do it. So, but you meet these people occasionally, and they're wonderful to be around. Not necessarily always sympathetic or nice people, but they are good people in that sense, that they walk the talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Carl, can you tell me a little bit about your own personal magical practice and conclusions you've come to?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been interested in many different things and systems, and usually very hungry and curious. And I think that's why I became involved in sort of this magical anthropological perspective. But that's also in a way on an intellectual level. I'm curious and hungry. But on a personal from a personal point of view, what I've been doing is that I became active in the mid 1980s, and that was slightly before or at sort of the same time that I got interested in LaVey. I was working with a British group that was sort of existing at the same time as the IoT and the first wave of chaos magic, called the Temple of Psychic Youth, Topi. And that was very, very rewarding and inspiring in many, many ways. And basically, you could say that that was also a new thing. Like LaVey had been new in the mid 60s, late 60s and onwards. Topi was also new in the sense that it was completely pragmatic. You take things from wherever you feel a resonance, and you make it your own little stew, and you work with that. And in their sense, there was not only expected protagonists like Crowley and Austin Spare and these people, but also weaving in literary or cultural figures like William Burroughs and Brian Geisen, who were also very interested in magic, but they created their own systems through their writing and through their art. So that was very, very inspiring for me. So, and that's something I still work with. The things that we worked with back then, they still linger on. And then towards the late 80s, I became interested in not only in Satanism and had those adventures with being invited to Black House and things like that. But I was also very interested in Crowley and joined the OTO and worked with that system for I don't know, slightly more than 30 years before I felt it was time to move on from that. So I've been deep into that rabbit hole also, and also in some other groups that have been more fleeting and fulfilling some kind of interest or need in me at the time. I've also been very interested in Asian religions and Asian systems, in a way, Tibetan Buddhism, but more specifically Taoism. Mm-hmm. I find this one of, if you talk about the big systems, I'm not even sure it's a religion, but that's a big, behavioral system and philosophy. I think Taoism has been the most vibrant for me long term. It's always been there. I find it very, very intelligent and also very, very magical. That's it. That's like the short story of my practice. So I do meditation, I do ritual. A lot of my work is ritual in the sense, I love being an author, so whatever I write, it becomes like a ritual, not only to uphold a lifestyle, but simply to see where it will take me next. And that's why I like people who are creative in the artistic sense also, is that they cannot but weave in their own creativity in their own magical practice. And of course, there are many great magicians working strictly within the system, strictly magical system. But I tend to hang out with and communicate more with people who are like LaVey was also trying new things out, weaving in things that are unexpected.
Yeah. I think that if ceremonial magic really resonates with somebody, I mean, to a T, if it fits them like a glove, then then that's the thing for them. But somebody who I really look up to and think is amazing, he's been a guest on this show twice, is Hagen von Tulian.
I know Hagen.
Yeah, he's an incredible artist, and his art is his magic, and his magic is his art, and he gets that connection. He gets that right brain, left brain connection so well. I've attended 2 of his seminars, and they're just out of this world good because he gets that it's about personalization, and I don't have that kind of artistic talent. I'm a musician, so I can do it with sound, but the way he does it with visual art, I just think it's fantastic. Especially if you're interested in creating sigils. I create sigils, but they're very simple. His are gorgeous works of art. But he understands that connection, and it's so important. And I really truly believe that that's what the essence of what magic is at its core. Before anything else, it's about your own personal connection to whatever, to the universe, to chaos, to Loki, to Satan, to whatever it is, whatever magical force resonates with you, your connection to it. It's not about following someone else's system unless that system fits you like a glove. But I don't. I have a hard time. I can't put myself in the shoes of somebody who uses someone else's system, and I just.
Yeah, no, I think they are out there also, and that's fair and fine, and to each his own or her own. But I think for us on this wonderfully darkly illuminated path, we have our symbols that we feel a resonance with, and part of that resonance is that you're doing things your own way. You can cherry pick basically. Take the best things from here and there and then and now, and just weave it into your own little web, and it's delightful. And I think that again, that's exactly what LaVey did. He was very pragmatic in the sense that he understood how ritual, whether on your own or in a group setting, can fulfill a wonderful and very healthy function in terms of psychodrama. You can be cathartic. You can get rid of energy that's sort of vampiric, if you will, and just get rid of it. So in that sense, healthy, but at the same time, being in that environment also builds up a charge that can be released in a constructive, creative way by expressing your will or your desire. So it fulfills many different functions at the same time. That's why ritual is very, very healthy. And that's something, of course, that Carl Jung and many of the other really illuminated people understood also, but from another perspective. They used psychological language or a mythological language, and it really doesn't matter. Even that frame of reference or language that you use can vary depending on who you are. But you still get to the core, and you see that doing certain things in a certain way is healthy. One of those things is ritualizing what you want to have happen, for instance. It's kind of a programming, and it's been around in human culture, in human consciousness since
the beginning of humans. I mean, we know now that what lots of cave art is magic, is the expression of desire in the form of artwork in order to turn that desire into a reality. That's magic. That's what magic is. I think that
Yeah.
a lot of people out there who are, I mean, number one, I think that I subscribe to the kind of the saying every thought is a prayer, every word is a spell. Everybody's doing magic all the time. It's just a matter of how intentional is your magic. And
Yeah.
people who journal in a ritualistic manner, like every day they journal, those people are performing magic because
Mhm.
they've created a ritual for themselves. They may not think of it as a ritual, but they have this little thing that they do every day that centers and grounds them.
Yeah.
And I think journaling is so important to magic. And it's lacking from normal everyday society for so many people, and that causes a tremendous amount of anxiety and built up energy
Yeah.
inside of them that they just don't know what to do with, and it's just bubbling. They don't even know it's there. They just don't feel right because they don't have that way of getting it out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. I feel bad for people who don't have that in their lives. And I'm very lucky as a professional tarot reader that I get to meet new clients all the time and express these ideas to them and encourage them to incorporate ritual into their
Yeah.
life. Even if it's,
Yeah.
I mean, I may lose clients this way, but I encourage all of my tarot clients to go get their own tarot deck and start doing it for yourself because it
Mhm.
will improve your life. I mean, even that simple pulling a single card for yourself once a day can
Mhm.
have can profoundly change your reality.
Yeah. Absolutely, and that's it. Also, it's a very important ritual too. And again, different cultures have their own little, different kinds of oracles. But just that thing where you um, externalize the process, and
Mhm.
that's really what art is. It's just like you paint on the cave wall, or you write a poem with an intention. It's this you have to externalize and formulate what you want to have happen, or get a reflection back, clarifying the situation, for instance. And so I find these things very, very helpful. Whether it's like I Ching or tarot things. I wouldn't say that they're like looked down upon. I think tarot, for instance, is more common than we can know, in the sense that there are, you see decks all over the place, even in mainstream media and stuff like that. It's not really as threatening as it used to be.
No, it's
It
becoming
used to
much
be
more
part of
accepted.
a cluster that was kind of dark,
Yeah.
but now it's sort of definitely more integrated, as is yoga. Back in the 60s and earlier than the 60s, yoga was looked upon as a kind of freakish behavior in the Western sphere. But now it's like every housewife is doing some kind of yoga, and a lot of, of course, other people too. And that's a great thing because it has such beneficial effects, even if it's commercialized, even if you have to have a certain kind of leotard, a designer leotard, to do it. It's still better that way because you're doing it. So I think that again, what we talked about before, this re-emergence of magical thinking and magical doing. That thing, this is part of this process, that where you integrate things that have been for thousands of years very, very beneficial to the individual, and thereby for the collective also.
I agree. It's interesting. I need to start doing yoga, but this is completely unrelated to my magical practice. It's because I'm a construction worker and I often have to squish myself into this tiny little space with a hammer drill or a nail
Yeah.
gun and get it in there, but I need to start doing yoga just to make my work life a little bit easier. But that's an example of how mainstream some of these things have become.
Yeah.
And tarot, like you were saying, tarot is so accepted now. It's wonderful for me as it's my business. Um, it's beautiful that so many people. I mean, most of my clients are not intensely spiritual people, or they're just finding their own spiritual path, or they're just discovering these things about themselves, or looking for something beyond normal reality because normal reality is fucking boring
Yeah.
and bland and full of bullshit. And I want to open people up to the magical reality that exists all around them that they've just shut out because of societal conditioning.
Yeah.
Magic, the word magic, I still think carries a little bit of woo to a lot of people, whereas like yoga and tarot don't. I think that's an interesting sort of split. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing with saying Satanism, again, kind of back to the beginning of this conversation, that carries this, oh no, kind of vibe in it. Even in witchcraft circles, people are like, oh no, I'm not a Satanist. Even though you may be practicing Satanism in every other way except calling yourself
Yeah.
a Satanist, it's got that oh no sort of
Yeah, no, absolutely.
vibe to it.
No, I think it's just people find a group, and then you have a group dynamic, and you have group leaders, and you want to sanitize everything and keep the group tight, and you don't want anything imposed that can be threatening, And so if you explain to, for instance, that kind of person that Satan or that kind of devilish figure in folklore is basically Pan, is basically the old god Pan, that they salute, that they work with. It's like, incredibly narrow-minded sometimes when you try to have a conversation about the, holistic aspects of all this, of human culture, and how it's basically our own relationship with nature and everything, every little hocus pocus, whether it's big religions or ritualized magic, everything boils down to or stems from a shamanic approach to nature. It's how we've been interacting with nature and the forces in nature. And, you can't get any more basic than that. And everything on top of that is interpretation, and it's formulation, and it's cultural infusion and diffusion that has led to people saying, no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, this kind of kindergarten level, whereas in fact it's all the same, meaning as individuals, as communities, we need to interact with some kind of nature in order to survive. And the sort of primitive thing was to go on to let the shaman work and find answers for the tribe. And today it's more complicated, but it's still kind of simple. It's just the same mechanics that need to be dealt with, the same insights that need to be found. And we have been very bad at that for a couple of 100 years, if not more. And it's going down the drain. And now I think a new kind of approach could perhaps be to strip the core principle of all the superstructures like religions and philosophies and terms and terminologies, and just look at what needs to be done, like a kind of a corporate crisis meeting. Say who needs to do what, and it doesn't matter if you're called a CEO or someone who works on the factory floor. Everybody needs to add to something that will fix the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one of the things that I love about, just to go off on a little tangent here, another thing that I find interesting about LaVey is he was really the guy who coined. He didn't come up with the term left-hand path, but he made it what it is today. Anybody who practices magic of any kind is probably aware of the dichotomy of the left-hand path and the right-hand path. This is something that, even though people reject Satanism, will talk about this as though it's something that it really existed and everyone knew about it before LaVey wrote about it, which is not really true. I mean, it existed in Hindu philosophy, and Helena Blavatsky talked about it a little bit, but really it wasn't this big split before then. But anyways, what I was getting at is that LaVey understood, in my opinion, this is what I've taken from his writings, that and the best thing you can do for the whole of society is to be the best version of yourself that you can be. And so when I think about the left-hand path and the right-hand path, and I look at all these ridiculous arguments that are on Facebook about it, you'll see a lot of people saying, well, service to self is bad and service to others is good. Well, you have to be in service to self to serve others. You have to be. You have to be on top of your game. You have to be capable and aware and able to do things in the world. If all you do is worry about other people and their feelings all the time, then you are useless.
Yeah, I agree, it's really so simple, and most people know it too. I mean, but unfortunately, most people seem to be, I don't know, willing is the wrong word, but they seem too slow in reacting and realizing when they are vampirized in a way, when they're drained of energy. I think that I don't know if I came up with it, but I have a term that I like to use, and it's altruistic egotism. It's you have to be egotistic in order to, as you say, help other people. And the more egotistic I am, in a sense, the more prone I am to help those I feel are worthy of that kind of compassion from me. If you want to spread yourself thin, with I don't know how many billion people we are now, with 8 billion people, whatever, it's going to be a thin affair. But if you pinpoint your altruism, and based on the fact that you have integrity, you have a container that's tight, hermetic in a way, then you can spread your energy and make a difference where it really will help.
And if everybody would do that, then boom, there you go. There's the whole world. If everybody took care of themselves first, then their immediate family, and if you're successful at that, then try and help out your friends outside of your immediate family circle. If everyone was doing that, boom, crisscross, it's the whole planet. But you can't just say, oh, I'm so selfless. All I think about is other people. Well, what do you do, though? Probably nothing.
One thing to return to the sort of left hand, right hand path thing, we could trace it back to, as you said, Hinduism and tantric culture and tantric traditions and stuff like that. Meaning basically working with either with the body or not with the body. But I think that in LaVeyan Satanism there is an aspect that is, even in that context, distinctly left-hand path, and that's the Epicurean attitude towards pleasure and enjoyment, and being conscious of what you're doing and what you're enjoying, but also what you're not enjoying. And of course, you shouldn't do that. But I mean that, for instance, like could be something so trivial and banal as consciously indulging in your favorite candy bar, when you're low in energy and you have your particular brand or whatever that you've loved since childhood. So it has that kind of aura as well. And then you don't only munch it down mechanically, but you actually consciously savor it and enjoy it. That is a ritual in under the Satanic umbrella that I would call distinctly left-hand path. People, of course, they want to romanticize, they want to exoticize and say that it has to do with advanced sexual rituals and using the body as a container or a retainer or an energy field or whatever. That's beautiful, that's fair and fine too, but it could be even more powerful if you're consciously aware of what you're doing to use other things that benefit the body and sensual pleasure and enjoyment of the body, simply because if you deny yourself that, for instance, by romanticizing or exoticizing too much, meaning, I have to go to this ashram in Nepal to study this tantric techniques, before then I'm not worthy to work with it, before then I will never understand it. Whereas in fact, it could be perhaps more liberating to actually take a moment and enjoy that candy bar, because then you'll realize, whoa, this gave me insight about my psychology in relation to my body, and I felt I transcended something by doing this thing. I mean, it sounds like a banal example, but I really do believe that sometimes it doesn't need to be quite as complex as the systems would like for you to believe that they are. Because there's always something to sell. And, the Eastern systems can claim that, there's no money involved. But actually, experience has shown that most of those cults have actually been very pecuniarily oriented, with Rolls Royces and, Bhagwan and all kinds of stuff. And maybe there's some core of like real learning in there. But maybe what most people from a left-hand path perspective need to do is basically just be aware of the body and beware of basic things like health, beware of things like, how can I maximize my enjoyment of the body? How can I sensitize it in a completely desensitized world? Things like that could be worth a lot more in terms of, adding to your great life than thinking about something that you don't have, that someone else has, that you need to get by submitting or subordinating yourself to some rigid structure or essentially, masochistic system that in the end will only cost you.
And a lot of times when people participate in those systems, they just go through the motions and they don't get the enjoyment out of it that they were hoping for.
No.
I love the candy bar idea. And I was thinking about it, and I think that the real difference between a Satanist and someone who is either religious in the Abrahamic sense or has just been subconsciously programmed by it, because society as a whole is horrifically subconsciously programmed by Christianity. But a Satanist would eat that candy bar and enjoy every bite of it and savor it and think, man, this candy bar was fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
I loved this candy bar. I'm so happy I got the candy bar. Where someone else might, buy the candy bar and sneak it into their grocery bag and hope no one is looking and then go hide somewhere and eat it and then feel bad about it afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, what was the point of the candy bar then? It just made you feel bad.
Yeah.
It should make you feel good.
Yes.
I mean, that's the whole point, is that it should make you feel good. And I personally, I'm a very hedonistic person. I really, really enjoy life so much. I need to rein it in a little bit. I need to improve my diet. One of the things that spoke to me in the Satanic Bible was when LaVey talks about indulgence and it leading you down a path of maybe saying exactly where I'm at now, like, okay, I need to lose 20 pounds, but man, did I enjoy putting it on.
Yeah, it can also be enjoyable working it off also, in terms of, working out, whatever.
But yeah, anyways, I do feel great every day doing this exercise, and I have lost a lot of weight recently, and I feel wonderful about it. So I felt wonderful about the food I was eating. I felt great about it because I live by this Satanic philosophy of just enjoying life, and now I feel good about losing the weight, and I feel like that's exactly the way it should be. Instead of, the other option is feeling bad about yourself for indulgence, and then feeling bad about yourself for the way that you look because of your indulgence, and then like forcing yourself to go to the gym, which ruins your mentality about being there. And it's just bad, and bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's all lined with options that will cost you money too, like with medications or expensive gym cards or whatever it is. There will always be someone there to take your money because you are not happy with how you are. So it's much better to go to the existential jugular and just make yourself happy. Much better. Just
choose to be happy. And I think that is something that Satanic philosophy enables in people is this ability to choose to be happy. Yeah. Because you let go of the idea that some external force is judging you. It's you judging you. And you need to get a grip on that. Stop externalizing it and say, I'm judging myself and I need to knock it off.
Yeah, I agree.
I wanted to bring up one more thing that you brought up, and this is another just huge issue within the spiritual community that makes me very sad. You will constantly see these articles and blogs and people going on about how ego is so bad and such a terrible thing. And if you want to be a spiritual person, you have to have an ego death and transcend your ego. Like, fuck that. To all that. It's nonsense. It's fucking nonsense. There's no part of you that is bad. Absolutely your ego can get overinflated, out of control, and cause you harm, but that's on you. if you let that happen. But your ego is the part of you that drives the story of your life forward. And it's so important to, rather than try and get rid of this part of you, to get a grip on it, make friends with it, and let it become an important part of you. Because without it, you'll never do anything.
Yeah, yeah,
you know?
exactly.
I love that Anton LaVey knew that and understood the importance of ego and talks about it in his book. You know, I think personally it's a balance between your ego self and what you could call your higher self and your lower self, and balancing the three. You know, but the idea that ego is inherently negative is just bullcrap, man. It's such an important part of you. Without it, you would have no motivation.
Right, exactly. And I think also that the one part of the confusion is that the people who refer to the ego as something bad, they usually have a very underdeveloped ego themselves. So again, we see this kind of projection going on, or a simplification, meaning that someone who's done something, you know, more or less objectively bad, people call them it's like an egotist, but maybe they're actually just very imbalanced people, that there are other things underneath the surface in their subconscious or unconscious that affect them in that way. It might not be the ego specifically. People act through the ego, but there are usually more deeper layers actually affecting it. So I think one has to look at oneself again first and develop ego, gratify the ego, because that there's nothing saying that, you know, you have to do that at the expense of someone else. It's a massive simplification, and that simplification usually comes from, in my mind, from people who are either afraid of their own ego or underdeveloped, people who are shying away from seeing who they really are, because you can't see who you really are unless you take all of these things in consideration. Look at the totality. You know, it's not, you're not only, like Freud would say, like the super ego. You're not only the moral aspect, you're also flooded with instinct and drives, and both, you know, the life drive and the death drive, and then you have the moralism on top, and squished in between this, in Freud's view, is like the ego trying to balance these things. And that's what you have to do. You have to work with ego. You have to be a good driver in a vehicle that could be very, very powerful engine, and you have to have a destination, you know. Otherwise you'll end up in a crash. You know, you have to be a good driver of your entire vehicle. The vehicle has to be controlled by you, and that is the ego.
And the ego is exactly like you said. Like the ego is the steering wheel of the car. You can't just let go of it.
Yeah.
You know, it's or you'll crash. Exactly like you said. That's perfect. Okay, well, Carl, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. This was a wonderful talk. I've been looking forward to this for so long because Satanism is really just a philosophy and a topic and a magical system that I'm so passionate about. And I get such little chance to talk about it with somebody who understands. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It was great.
Yeah, awesome. I hope to have you back on the show one day. Just again,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we got lots to talk about next time. So thank you so much.
I'm sure. Take care. Bye.
You too.
Bye.